Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. It's Wednesday, July 21st, and we are happy to be assembled, as it were, once again at Olive Grove Baptist Church in Norfolk, Virginia, for our regular Wednesday evening Bible study and our discussion. For the last few weeks, we have been making our way through the book of Judges. I was away last week, and I'm grateful to my colleague in ministry, Reverend Bell, for leading the conversation on the subject of, on the contents of the 6th chapter of the book of Judges, and tonight we'll take a look at chapter 7. Let's begin our time with prayer. Eternal God, we are grateful for another day's journey and for another chance to consider your word and its implications for our lives. Indeed, we consider your word a lamp for our feet and a light for our path, and we feel lost without its direction. So thank you for the gift of your word, even the gift of your Son, our Savior, who brought us the word, embodied the word in flesh, and came to live among us. Thank you for that unspeakable gift and for the moments and now we share. Breathe on these moments that as a consequence we be drawn closer together and closer to you, enlightened and invigorated, excited to become more like him and more consistent with your will in our creation. This is our prayer, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, now, we have been calling this protracted conversation Beware of Undertow, and that's the broad topic. And the notion is that there is such a thing, and here on the East Coast, as I imagine close to water everywhere, undertow is a word that means a lot to people because of the dangers of being taken under by unpredictable waters. And we borrowed that and applied it as a metaphor to our lives as Christians, saying to ourselves, beware of undertow. What are some things that can take a good Christian under? The water takes whoever lands in a whirlpool under, and possibility is they might drown. But if we want to borrow the metaphor, we need an idea or two about what negative consequences might befall a Christian who is a victim of undertow. Yes, Mary?
I was thinking of unforgiveness when you first asked the question.
Mm-hmm. Unforgiveness? Mm-hmm. That's a very good one. I hadn't thought of that, but I appreciate that. I'm going to put that on my list. What else? My reverend friend has laryngitis, so she won't sound like herself if we can hear her at all. Is your microphone on, baby? It's on.
She states lack of faith.
Lack of faith. Lack of faith can take a Christian under. That's a good one too. Mm-hmm. Anything else? When I made this list, I included on that pride, misplaced confidence, blasphemy, carelessness, lawlessness, and sometimes laziness. If I asked that question in a group full of people, if the room were full, or if everybody who's watching and listening online were to answer, someone in the group would say sin is the thing that can take a good Christian under. And I would have said to the person who answered sin, I said, that's true. What do you mean? Because when we say sin, it's such a catch-all word, and we use it often without regarding the reaches, the numbers of things that can fit under the umbrella called sin, like unforgiveness, like lack of faith, like lawlessness, like pride or arrogance. So there are all kinds of things, and if I gave you more time and listened to all the people who are thinking this through, You could come up with some other things that can take a good Christian or a no good Christian under. So that when we've been going through this book of Judges in an effort to enrich our own understanding of the perils of undertow, the bad things, the negative outcomes that can befall us. And we've been using the life of the characters in the book of Judges, or the lives of the characters in the book of Judges, especially the judges themselves, to learn from them, so that the things that they did that produced helpful, productive results, we see them as things worth emulating, that's worth learning from. And the things that we see turned out not in their favor, the things that produced negative consequences, negative outcomes for them, we see in exactly the opposite light. And so, thank you, Al. So we don't we avoid those things. And so our look at the book of Judges has not been primarily a history lesson. It's primarily a lesson on practical living. How do we get through this life in the most productive, the most effective way, in a way that pleases God most? You had something to say already, or you just getting a microphone to get ready?
I was just getting a microphone. Well, I will say one of the things that crossed my mind is greed is one of the things that could be a source of undertow.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good, and it would go on a list of things that we typically describe as we often describe as sinful, but it's one of those that we sometimes don't consider greed as egregious as we might consider theft or adultery or murder. And yet, how many people die because greedy people are so greedy? And so it's one of those sins that sometimes get a pass, and we don't hold it against greedy people so much as we might hold theft against a thief. Sometimes I guess it's because we don't always feel personally offended by someone else who's greedy, although the greedy often take more than they need, more than their fair share. Yes, sir.
And they can be tied to theft.
Yeah. A lot of greedy people are thieves, aren't they? Yeah. I remember quoting Leo Daniels a few weeks ago, who says that for every one who gets a bargain, somebody pays the full price. So that I was listening to this TV show recorded in Harlem in 1971, while a bunch of people were at Woodstock. There were a lot of other people who were in Harlem. They say 300,000 people, and one of the lines that comes to mind from watching that was a line from Gil Scott-Heron, who said, "My sister Ruby, a rat bit my sister Ruby last night, and White is on the moon. I lost my job and don't have any money to pay my rent, and White is on the moon." And then he goes on with all the negative things in his own life or in the lives of his people. It's a poem. You know, Gil Scott-Heron was a poet, and the Revolution Will Not Be Televised poet. And so here we are in much the same place 50 years later, talking about the best use of resources and how much it costs the have-nots for the haves to have what they have. So yeah, greed and theft, I think, indeed go hand in hand, and they are often culprits when Christians are taken under, because for some of us, the more we get, the more we want. And the more we get, the more we perceive we need. And sometimes we find ourselves trying to meet our own needs. And so the undertow can have that kind of effect on us. If we are to win in our fight to resist the ravages of undertow that would take us under, Gladys says faith is key. And in the 7th chapter of Judges, in the first 8 verses, the writer lays out before us some of the events in the life of one judge who you visited last week with Gladys and her fleece before the Lord. That's Gideon. And now Gideon is in a new phase. I've said to you before, the judges they played 2 roles. And one role was the military leaders. They were the proverbial generals of the army. And in the other role they made decisions regarding the law, and they interpreted the law on behalf of the people. And so here we see in these verses Gideon about to go to war. The first 8 verses, if you will, Mary. The voice is not here tonight of all times. Oh, Ron is going to read for him. Great, thank you.
All right.
Early in the morning, Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Morah. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian unto their hands, or Israel will boast against me. My own strength has saved me, shouted. A sword for the Lord and for Gideon.
Mary, what happened there?
Yeah.
Did we miss something?
You missed something.
Go back, Mary. Look like a line is missing.
Yes. Let me see it.
Say what?
The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into your hand, or Israel will boast against me. My own strength have saved me. Now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. So 22,000 men left, while 10,000 men remained. But the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you there. If I say this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told them, separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink. 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give you the Midianites into your hand. Let all the others go home. So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300, who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others. Now the camp of Midian lay below him in the valley.
All right. These 8 verses. Last week, in the discussion, we found Gideon testing God.
Amen.
Gideon lay his fleece twice before God, waiting for God to respond to him, and God responded to Gideon. In these verses, we find another kind of test. It seems that God tests Gideon. What are the reasons you imagine God tests us? What is God's purpose in testing us? I'm going to give you a microphone so you can answer. And you're going to help Brother Register. Brother Register, we have to have microphones so that the people who are online can hear. Otherwise, they won't hear what we're saying. So get close to somebody with a microphone. And you got one? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, what I'm thinking is that the reason why God tests us so that He will show us or teach us our faults in the way that we determine things. So it's more like a test. He's testing us to see where our hearts are. That's what I'm
Our
saying.
hearts?
You know,
Okay.
how we feel
Okay. So the
or
test,
believe.
the test is to show us
test
something
is
about
more-
ourselves.
Yeah.
Brother Register.
Yes, good afternoon. I can only speak the test that I went through.
Okay.
And the test that I went through, because sometimes we don't believe something. We don't know if God is the one doing it. And in my case, I was like, I don't know if the Lord brought me back that first time. I said, well, I'm going to go back out here. I'm going to try it again. And he put me in that place again, which it was the normal people so angry at me because they said, he ain't going to pull out this one. He ain't going to make. But when God said, now you know who did it for you. It wasn't the other people because they counted you out. So I ain't got no choice but say, okay, I went through a test. I failed it. I was hard-headed. So I said, I'm going to try it again. And by his means, with his talk, he can teach us that I'm the only one you really got that can send you through a test like that. You know, your test is different from everybody else's.
Now, brother, Register, there are some people who don't know what you're talking about because they don't know that much about your story. So I need you to give a little background about your test in order for the people who are part of our virtual conversation to get it.
Okay, I'll go back a little bit. I've been tested with, basketball, my love of my life, but I was like, I thought that was it. Matter of fact, I played against Bum. We used to have our days, you know, but as we got older, you know, I decided to keep on with the young fellas that, I got what you got, I can still do it. And then I played a little too long, and I passed out the first time. And when I left that court, everybody said I was dead. They said there was no life in me. There was nothing. Even the paramedics, you know, with all the hollering and everybody shouting, they said, well, ain't nothing we can do but take him to the hospital. But on the way out, they tried to revive me. They say they revived me twice on the way to the hospital. Then I went out in the house in the emergency room. And they wind up sticking these tubes down me. They said, well, he just push him on out. He ain't gonna make it. But I made a test through that and made it out. I couldn't walk, I couldn't eat, I couldn't talk. That was one of the first times. That was a tough one for my family. Not me, because I didn't even know all the things was happening. So after I got well enough to walk, God said, you're going to walk, you're going to talk. And I did. And I got up and ain't nothing wrong with it. I think they were mistaken. I mean, I can play. And so that second time, I said, well, Lord, I'm just going to go out there and play one game to prove something. One game turned to 2 games. But the second time, same thing happened. I was out, I fell out again. No pulse, no nothing. And then the doctor said, the same doctor in the emergency room, isn't this the same guy with the same shorts that we took off?
You recognize your shorts?
Yeah,
Oh, my.
I went in there with my shorts on.
Okay.
And he said, the same shorts. And he said, I can't believe that. He's back in here again. But that's what happened to me. 2 times out.
So two times you found yourself on the brink of death.
On the brink.
At a place where you had no pulse, and you were not responsive, and each time when others thought you would not recover, you did. And so when you talk about the test, if God was testing you, the first time perhaps was to prove something about your faith. That's why Gladys says faith or lack of faith can be responsible for taking us under. Lack of faith is responsible for the undertow. So if you don't trust God, and it's kind of you and Deaconess Parker have much the same perspective. And the first way she said it was, God's trying to prove something to us about our own faith. And the second time, as you describe it, God proved something by the test about who God is. Yeah. So the test can be a twofold kind of thing. On the one hand, you learn stuff about yourself that you didn't know. And on the other hand, you learn stuff about God that you didn't know. Yes, Reverend. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Don't worry about it. Just talk.
And it also, he tests us so we can know
Know what?
where we are.
Right.
Because sometimes we don't know where our faith is in.
Right.
So he puts us to the test. Mm-hmm. And once we go through that test and we believe him, it prepares us for the next test.
The test to strengthen us. Yeah. So when we come through what we didn't think we could come through, and we consider how we made it, where we made it, there's an inclination on the one hand to say, I did this, I made it, I overcame, I worked hard, I pressed my way, I got donations from people or whatever, you think, maybe you think it was the doctor or the bank or whoever came through for you. And so when Gideon has this conversation, Gideon has 32,000 soldiers. He's got more than a heavy division worth of soldiers. That's a lot of men, and these men are armed to differing and varying degrees of ability with the different weapons. Some have spears, no doubt, and some have knives, and some have swords. But the more we read through this, the more we learn about how they were really armed in the end when they had finally fight this battle. And so with this 32,000 soldiers, God says, I can't let you take that many in, because if you take that many, you won't think it was you. Yeah. But I'm trying to show you something. So I can't let you have that many. Let me help you with this muster. Yes, Mary.
Don't call me Reverend. But one of
You
the
sound like
things
it's an insult.
I didn't hear, one of the things I didn't hear in the room was it's like learning how to ride a bike or drive a car. Mm-hmm. We're so busy in the natural, but you have to learn how to move in the spirit and recognize when you're moving into the natural or when you're letting God do what he do. And I think I'm still learning. All of us are still learning as the tests change what we can do and what we must let God do.
And that's what where we get in this lesson with Gideon, because he surrenders when God says, let me help you with this number. You got too many men, and if I let you take that many men, you have the odds are in your favor. Yeah. And when the odds are in your favor and you win, then you might walk away from the battlefield thinking that you did this, and that because there were so many people on your side, and that your army is so well trained and so well resourced, so well equipped, and that's why you made it. So I can't let you think like that. I've got to put you in a position of disadvantage, and when you're in a position of disadvantage, you learn some things about God and about faith in God that you can't tell when you have an advantage. Yes, Reverend. I know it's hard, but talk anyway. If it doesn't hurt you, it's not hard to hear. I've had laryngitis before. I know how that goes.
And it brings you back to your original question. the original question was, what is some of the things that would take a Christian under? And that self-pride, when we can take the big I out of whatever happened, and it shows that it was no way possible that I could have done it. God would get the glory. So that was what was going on here, where man would have gotten the glory with all of this 23,000. And God, they would have said, we did this and we did that and we conquered. But it would be no way that God would have shined. God would have gotten the glory.
It's what Mary says about what we miss when we this the footprints point. When you think that you're making it by yourself, but we're never alone. We're never alone. We're never by ourselves. We're never making it on our own strength. We don't always acknowledge, and sometimes perhaps we are not always even aware that He brings us, and we don't bring ourselves. It's Psalm 100. It is He who has made us, and not we ourselves. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture. So when we come close to Him, we come with thanksgiving and praise because He's good. And so that's it seems so picayune, so trite, so ordinary because He makes it look easy. He makes keeping us on the straight and narrow look easy. He makes keeping us safe look easy because most of the time we are unaware of the dangers that we face. Most of the time we are unaware of how wrong things could turn, and we're not aware of the things that He protects us from. So Newton writes, through many dangers, toils, and snares, I've already come. But it wasn't me. It was grace that brought us safe thus far, and grace will lead us home. And so it's a test for the people of Israel, and a test for Gideon himself to come to a place where he appreciates that it really is true that one can chase 1,000 and the two can put 10,000 to flight. But if you take 32,000 and you pit 32,000 against an inferior force, everybody expects the superior force to win. But who expects the inferior force to win? Nobody. And so God shows Himself in a way that surprises the 300 who ultimately end up going to battle. Can we see verse 3, Mary? Now announce to the army. This is the announcement. Anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. That's the announcement. So if you're scared, go home. Don't stay out here. I think it's a Matty Moss Clark song. God don't want no coward soldiers in His band. So that fear has a way of provoking fear. So you and your co-laborer are working on the same project, and you turn to each other and say, "You scared? I'm scared." So if we both agree that we're scared, and I said, "Well, so you scared and I'm scared. Let's not do nothing." So God says to Gideon, "Tell all of them. Now everybody who's scared, tell them just go home. I don't need the negative vibes. I don't need the negative. We can't win this. I don't need the man. I don't want to do this. Man, we can't beat these guys. There's too many of them, and they're too well equipped." He said, "I don't need none of that." So everybody who just too scared to fight, I ain't mad. Just go on back home.
Because fear can be contagious,
Yeah.
especially in a larger group. And
Yeah.
then that's how panic comes in, and you got a whole bunch of people running
Yeah.
and trampling each other
Yeah.
because of fear.
You need a microphone, baby.
The song of, I believe it's called, I think it's called, it's God Doesn't Need Any Coward Soldiers. Is that's what that song
I
came
think that's
from?
what it means. I think that's what that's about. No coward soldiers in his band. Don't want them. Don't need them. Can't have them. Can't use them. So yeah, go on home. If you're scared, go home. And so 22,000 people went home. 2/3 of the soldiers who were there. That's a division by itself. A whole division, and now it's gone from being a division with its slices to a division with less than his full complement of reservists and everybody else. So he has 22,000 fewer soldiers than he started with, because this is a test. They need to be able to see the power of God and the power of faith. And they need to come to a place where they believe that faith itself is victory. So if you can come to a place where you believe that you can't lose because you're on the Lord's side, that's an overwhelming thing in your favor that puts things decidedly in the win column, even while the battle is still being fought. So there's another song for Deaconess Parker. Don't wait till the battle is over. Shout now, because you know in the end you're going to win. So faith is the victory. Yes, Reverend.
And it speaks to the 10,000 that was left. Because if you have this 23,000 army,
32,000.
32,000 army, and 23 just leave, and all you have is 10,000 left. That group that's left will have to feel a certain kind of way. That group that's left, seeing over 2/3 leave and run home. So that group have to say, well, we need to go too. Everybody else is going, or believe God.
Yeah, well, somebody was the first one to leave. When the invitation to go home came, there was a brother in that crowd. They had to ask him twice. They didn't have to tell him, if you want to go, you can go. He said, really? All right, deuces. He was out. He left, and after he left, it made it easier for the second man to leave. Now, after the 200th man left, then it becomes easier for other people to leave, because they've come to the place where, for them, there's no shame in going home. There's no shame in leaving the battlefield. Now, based on everything we've read, that Deacon Bell just read, the opposing force was in the valley beneath them. And so they had high ground. They had a superior position, so they could look down on the opposing force. And so they knew where the bad guys were, and they had an idea of how many the bad guys were. So they looked down at this army, and Gideon said he was speaking for God. So if you want to go home, go home. And so somebody started to train, and 22,000 men later, there were only 10,000 left. And what happened, Mary?
But the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out there for you.
Yeah.
If I say, this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say, this one shall not go with you, he shall not go.
Hang on right there. Here we are, with let's put 10,000 men side by side. 10,000 men shoulder to shoulder. Not 10,000 men in ranks. Not 10,000 men one behind the other, 10 on the front rank and 10 in the next rank and on and on. Not like that. Here are 10,000 men at the river's edge waiting for their test. Who goes forward to battle and who doesn't go? And in this instance, God says to Gideon, his general, take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you. I'm really reluctant when it comes to excusing people, accepting people, EXCEPTING, cutting people out because of my assessment of their readiness for the tasks that is ahead. I much prefer God does the separating. I much prefer God do the thinning out. God, He knows us in ways that I don't know us. I know you say you ain't scared, but I see them knees is knocking. So if you ain't scared, why are your knees knocking? If you ain't scared, why are you shaking like that? If you ain't scared, why are you walking behind everybody else? Why are you walking so slow if you ain't scared? You know, if you ain't scared, then you I expect you to be up on the front line saying, let's go get them. But here we are with 10,000 people being tested ostensibly at the same time. Now, who else but God can test 10,000 soldiers at the same time? Because we know what we see because we look at the outward appearance. But God looks at our hearts and knows the coward soldiers from the brave soldiers. He knows who's ready for combat and who's not ready. He knows who has prepared himself. He knows the courageous from the fearful. And fear and faith have a hard time occupying the same space. It may be true that there's no place for fear among the faithful, if you're truly faithful. It's I will trust in the Lord till I die is a good song, and it's easy to sing. And a lot of people sing it. But the test is when you have to walk your talk, when you have to come through, when the odds are against you, when you don't have the overwhelming force, when you don't, when the people, the number against you is greater than the number on your side. That's where that saying comes from. God and one make a majority, or one and God make a majority. So if you either get on the Lord's side or want the Lord on your side, and it's much easier for us to get on the Lord's side than it is for us to be, most of us, to be assured that God is on our side. Yes, Brother Register.
I just said, when you talk about fear.
Pick it up a little higher, your microphone. No, it's just close.
Oh.
There you go.
When you talk about fear, and you surrounded by, like you say, you want to remove other people that's supposed to be faithful and strong. But there was a time when I was on that dialysis machine, and I go in there, and I kept telling people, I ain't going to be on this thing long. And they were like, you're going to be on that with us all forever. But and every night I went home, I went back to the hospital, they would say, oh, God come visit me. He said, you'll be off that in weeks. But the more I went back to tell them, there were more people saying, you ain't getting off this. And sometimes people keep putting fear in you. It kind of weakens you. And you start to cry and say, hey, I don't know, Lord, you telling me I'm going to get off of it, but they say I ain't. So you know, fear about somebody else telling you, so you, I don't know how you handle that, but you.
Well, you did handle the way God told Gideon to handle it was to tell him to go home. I don't thank you for your information, but I believe God. I don't believe you. If God says one thing and you say something else, well, I'm going to believe God because I don't know your record, but I know God's record. And so that's where fear and faith come into conflict with one another. Fear and faith sitting side by side in the treatment room. And each one sitting in a big easy chair. Chairs look just alike. Sitting in the chair on the left is a man who trusts God, and sitting in the chair on the right is a man who says, man, I'm going to die just like this. And so there is the one who trusts God, said, I know I'm going to die, but I ain't dying like this. And because you're believing, you're trusting God for your healing, for your deliverance. And then there's a fellow sitting next to you who just said, this is as good as it gets. I'm gonna just keep on coming back here every day and go get on a machine every whatever amount of time I have to stay on a machine. And if I perish, well, you know, I had a good run. So there's fear, and then there's faith. And when that's the thing about that notion about people like Job who feared God. He stood in awe before God because he had a really good sense of God's power and God's sovereignty. He had a really good understanding about what God could do. He can destroy, but he will defend. And so when we recognize the height and the depth of the power of God, it puts us in a different place. If I think I'm all by myself, you know, I got reason to be afraid because it's just me. But if it's God and me, then I'm much less afraid because I have confidence not in me but in Him. Gladys said pride can take you under. Pride can put you in a place where you begin to rely either on yourself or on your doctor. I got the best renal doctor in the business. My renal doctor, you know, writes books and teaches all over the world. I got the best kidney doctor there is. He went to the best medical schools, and he's done some of the best research, and he's got a wonderful reputation. I'm going to put all my trust in this physician. But one day, the physician is going to need a physician. And all that he knows, and all the books that he's written, and none of that will do him any good. Yes, Reverend.
And that's where fear comes from when you put your trust in the wrong God. When you put all of your trust in God, fear doesn't take control. But when you put your trust in things and man, fear takes root.
What is that acronym? Fear, false evidence, what? Appearing real? Yeah. So it looks. If you believe the guy in the chair next to you, then you all sit there trembling together. But if you tell him, can you sit somewhere else? Or can they let me sit somewhere else? Because I don't want to sit in with the negativity. Do like Gideon did. Maybe you could send them home. I don't know if they go home if you tell them. Tell them if you scared, go home. Yes, Mary.
You reminded me of when Adam was young. He was really small, but my daddy was over 5'5", so I didn't bother about it until some doctor in this partnership decided that he had a rare African disease. And I knew my child was cool. I just knew it in my heart. But I had to stand up against him and them threatening me with child protection services. And my sister was an RN, said if I didn't do what they said, she could lose her license. She was going to turn me in. And it was a test of not just my faith, but I had to push back against the systems of this world. My husband wouldn't stand because everybody, but my baby was running around with all this energy. He could talk, he could do all these things that they said that he shouldn't be able to do. So one doctor was a praying doctor who invited me into what appeared to be a very small room. It had to be the closet. And we prayed in that room. One doctor did it in secret and stopped the process so that my son could be tested by King's Daughters. Now y'all know how big Adam is now. They called him a dwarf and told him he wasn't going to live past 12. But my spirit knew different.
And now Adam got children.
He got children coming.
Yeah. So Gideon's left with these 10,000 who say they ain't scared. But God is trying to prove a point. And the point is that it's not the numbers of who are with you that matter. What matters is the one who is with you. That's what matters. And so they go down and they have tested. So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink. Now, have you ever drunk water that way? Like a dog drinks water? I don't think I say what? Not sober? Yeah, not recently. Yeah. Interesting perspective that you get down on your hands and knees with no doubt with your hands in the water and suck up the water from the river like turning your lips into a straw. And you drink the water like that. What are you laughing at? So you get that picture in your mind. So here they are, 10,000 jokers, all trying to get a drink, and some get it that way. And what's the next verse, Mary? 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord told Gideon, with the 300 men that lapped, I will save you. I will save you. And read this, I will give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home. So here we have now 9,700 more brothers who are sent home. They're not ready for this kind of fight. But the promise that God gives to Gideon is, with these 300, I will give the Midianites to you. And so Gideon is at a place now. This is a man who has a measure of trust in God because he's fresh off of this fleecing exercise. So this is not years later that Gideon finds himself in this position with another chance to trust God. Now, in my mind, it's understandable that sometimes we would question God. It makes sense to me that sometimes you hear from God and you say, really? But if you find yourself always questioning God, so Gideon is not, he's come off the fleece exercise and he's seen God winnow this army down from 32,000 to 10,000, and now he winnows the army down to 300 and makes a bold promise. It's not a prediction, it's a promise. It's not a prophecy, it's a promise that I will give you victory. And that's why I've said to you in this instance, faith itself is victory. So when you come to the place where you trust God to bring you out, to bring you through, then you know that victory already belongs. Victory already belongs. So with the 300, Mary. So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300 who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others. So they gave up. They had taken food with them. They had taken their lamps with them. They'd taken their oil with them. They'd taken their weapons with them. They'd taken whatever they had to wage war with them. But the men who went home didn't take their resources with them. They didn't take their battlefield armor. They didn't take their shields. They didn't take their trumpets. They didn't take their lamps with them. They left that for the 300. So these are 300 very well resourced soldiers. Now the camp of the Midian lay below him in the valley. So we know that they were in a place where they could observe the enemy forces. And in that kind of high ground position, they can overlook and even strategize. They can talk about how they are going to deploy these 300 men against the Midianite army. And so we get into that place. I'm going to try to get to verse 14 from verse 9. Ron?
During that night, the Lord said to Gideon, "Get up, go down against the camp, because I am going to give it into your hands. If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah, and listen to what they are saying. Afterward, you will be encouraged to attack the camp." So he and Purah, his servant, went down to the outposts of the camp. The Midianites, the Amalekites, and all the other eastern peoples have settled in the valley, thick as locusts. Their camels could no more be counted than the sand on the seashore. Gideon arrived just as a man was telling a friend his dream. "I had a dream," he was saying. A round loaf of barley bread came tumbling into the Midianite camp. It struck the tent with such force that the tent overturned and collapsed. His friend responded, "This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hands."
So here the enemy forces say, "Oh man, we about to get skunked. They coming." So Gideon has this recon mission. He's a spy. So he low crawls down the valley and gets himself in a position where he can hear what they're talking about. He sees how many they are. There's a bunch of them. They got more camels than he can count. So if they have so many camels, imagine how many men there are, and what the camels are carrying. The camels that are load-bearing animals, and not like horses for the men to ride their backs. So they got that many camels and that many men, and they're packed tight. And it's not only one nation, but they're more than one nation. And of all the places where Gideon and his man would end up, they end up in a place where they can hear what the Ob-4, what the bad guys, what the opposing force, what the enemy is talking about. And guess what he finds out? They scared. They're scared. And when he becomes aware of their fear, then Gideon is inspired, because if you know that the other guy is scared, it can help you to build up your own courage. And so Gideon must put this all together when he thinks about the promise from God to give him victory. So not only does God say to Gideon that I'm going to give you the victory, the Amalekites say the same thing. We're about to get overrun by Gideon and his army. Now they have no idea that at that time the size of Gideon's army is just 300. They no doubt expected 32,000 or another big number of people to come against them, and they feel outmatched, expecting to be overrun. So that again, imagine. I've told you before a story about a little boy who used to get beat up going to school every day. Get beat up at the bus stop. And the gangsters, bullies would take his lunch and his lunchbox and his money, and he'd come home every day and tell his parents what happened that day. Why are you so hungry? I didn't eat lunch. Why didn't you eat your lunch? And he tells the bullies took my lunch and my money, and I didn't have lunch and I didn't have money to buy lunch, so I'm hungry. And after going through that enough days, his big brother, who hears this and gets enough of it, decides that he's going to follow his baby brother to the bus stop and hide from his baby brother, but he's going to be prepared to protect him if he needs to. And so he does that, and he goes and he watches from the bushes where the bullies come out, and the bullies see behind the little boy his big brother standing there with his hands on his hip, says, "Here, do something. Do something. Go ahead. You do something. I wish you would do something." But he's silent, and his baby brother remains oblivious to the fact that his brother is behind him. But the bullies leave him alone. Here's Gideon standing with 300 soldiers, and he has some idea, perhaps, that his specter is frightening to his enemies, because there's somebody behind him that he can't see, but the enemy can see. The enemy knows that he's there. And so with these 300, he takes an inferior force and wages war against a superior force, because Gideon is not alone, because the 300 are not by themselves, because the 300 have not only the accoutrements of the 27,000 or 20, I guess that's 31,900 who went home. He's got now all of these men. He's got what they left for him to wage war, and so he's ready. But more than that, he has the promise of God that says, "I will give you the victory." And so here we see faith and fear in opposition to one another. On the one hand, there's fear, and on the other hand, there's faith, and faith wins out over fear. So faith is the victory. The opposing force, the Midianite army, is afraid of Gideon and what they believe Gideon will do and is capable of doing. And part of it is because it was revealed in a dream to one of the soldiers, and he shared it with another soldier. And no doubt, our soldiers do. He shared it with another soldier, who shared it with another soldier, who shared it with another soldier, who shared it with another soldier. And before long, the word gets out that we're about to get spanked by Gideon. And so fear takes root in the enemy forces, and we're about to see what happens next. Yes, Mary?
I find it interesting that last week we were hearing about Gideon and his fleece, and the Lord, knowing who he is, agreed to give him encouragement this way. He let the enemy tell him the same thing the Lord told him. He didn't even have to ask, "Prove it to me." Mm-hmm. He has built him enough, but he's still meeting him in that place to make sure he's strong for the battle.
Yeah, the Lord says, "I know this Gideon. Gideon need a fleece, and so I'm gonna go ahead. You don't need to put the fleece down. I got to watch this." And so he gives Gideon what Gideon needs in order to have faith in God. Ain't he good?
He's so good.
He give you what you need to have faith, even before you ask or think. And so next week we'll see what happens next in the life and work of God's judge named Gideon. And we'll begin our time in verse 15 and see what that brings to us. All right. Thank you for being a part of our conversation tonight and for tuning in, as it were, by way of YouTube. Dial us up again. We'll be here Sunday morning at 11 o'clock for our regular morning worship on Sunday, and then meet us next Wednesday at 7. We'll be so glad to have you. God bless you. Good night.
There's a song. That's what we